The grand crystal dome of the Varelian Council shimmered under the twin suns as the younger explorers gathered, their eyes glowing with excitement and pride, waiting for the ancient elders to speak. The council hall was quiet except for the soft hum of the glowing floor beneath their feet. Elder Thalin, whose skin was etched with age-old marks of memory, stepped forward and raised his hand, his voice slow but clear. He spoke of Earth, a world from the inner spiral arm, a planet small in size but great in mystery. "We warned the others before you," he said, his eyes dark with remembrance. "Do not disturb the humans." The young explorers shifted, some frowning, some smiling, as if hearing an old ghost story. Elder Sari followed, her tone colder. "They are not like us. They grow stronger under pressure, smarter in chaos. Their will cannot be measured." The young captain, Venril, laughed quietly. "But no contact has been made for over 1,000 cycles. Surely they're extinct by now." Thalin did not smile. "They do not vanish. They wait." The room fell silent for a moment. The explorers had heard the stories in training about how Earth once stood against a mighty empire and survived without help. But that was ancient history, unrecorded by most civilizations, more myth than truth. Still, protocol required that any approach to Earth be done with permission. But the Varelian fleet, proud of its stealth and technology, had no intention of waiting. They wanted to see the legend for themselves. Captain Venril, young and curious, decided to lead the expedition. His science team believed Earth had gone silent due to a natural collapse. No signals, no satellites, no ships detected in orbit. All readings showed a quiet planet covered in green and blue, spinning slowly in space. No signs of advanced civilization. He sent word to launch. As the fleet slipped through the void, Elder Thalin stood watching from the highest tower, whispering not to the wind, but to something older. "Forgive them," he said. "They do not yet know the weight of memory." The journey to Earth took 4 cycles. Along the way, they studied the planet's old records, mostly fragments, human language, art, old video signals. Some of it made the Varelians laugh. Humans seemed so emotional, so chaotic, so primitive. But other pieces were strange. Stories of unbreakable hope, impossible survival, and a stubbornness that bent reality. When the fleet finally arrived in the Sol system, Earth appeared peaceful. No weapons, no transmissions, just clouds swirling over oceans and continents. The sensor readings were odd. They couldn't penetrate deep into the planet. Something blocked them, not technology, but something natural, or perhaps something unnatural disguised as nature. The science officer noted electromagnetic shifts that seemed to rise and fall with no clear pattern. It was as if the planet breathed. Still, the mission continued. Venril ordered a single probe to be sent to the surface, targeting an area once called North America. The probe landed in a wide open field near what looked like ancient ruins. The buildings were covered in green, vines growing through windows, streets cracked by roots, no movement, no heat signatures, nothing alive. But then the probe shut down. No signal, no damage, just gone. The crew blamed malfunction. A second probe was sent, and it too vanished, though this time the ship's sensors caught something strange, a spike of energy from beneath the ground. "It's the planet," whispered one technician. "It's aware." Venril ignored the comment and prepared a small landing team. They would go themselves, walk the surface, and see what secrets Earth still held. Joril, the quietest of the crew, felt uneasy. He had read the ancient warnings more carefully than the others. There were mentions not only of human strength, but of how Earth itself seemed to protect them, a planet that evolved alongside its people, a living partner. As their shuttle broke through the clouds, Earth felt larger than before. The sky was deeper, the wind louder. They landed near the old ruins. The grass moved without wind. The air smelled heavy, not dangerous, but thick with something they couldn't name. Joril bent down and touched the soil. It was warm. The buildings nearby were not empty. They were asleep. That was the only way to describe it. The place felt like it was holding its breath. One explorer called out, "Nothing here but ghosts." But a low hum began to rise, coming not from above, but below. Their communication devices started to flicker. Time seemed to stretch. 10 seconds passed, but their internal clocks showed 1 minute. Joril stood still, heart racing. Something was watching, not from the shadows, but from the air, the dirt, the sky itself. They had not been invited. They had been warned. As they prepared to return to the shuttle, one of the crew dropped to their knees, whispering in a strange tongue, not Virelian, not programmed, English. He spoke of fire, ice, and stars breaking apart. He saw flashes of battles that weren't his, and cities that rose and fell in the blink of an eye. He wept. Earth was speaking through him, or showing him what it remembered. They rushed him back to the ship, but the damage was done. The ship's systems began rewriting themselves, files merging with old human records, history blending into memory. Earth had touched them, not with weapons, but with truth. Back in orbit, Venril stared at the planet, unsure of what they had found. It was not dead, it was not weak, and it was not alone. The elders had not been trying to scare them. They had tried to protect them. From Earth, from what humans had become. The planet glowed faintly now, not with sunlight but with awareness, as if it was waiting to see what they would do next. Joril sat quietly in his chamber, drawing symbols he had never seen before, humming an old Earth song that echoed from a forgotten time. And far below, deep within the heart of Earth, something ancient began to stir, not in anger but in memory. The Virelians had come seeking a legend, and found a sleeping giant, still dreaming of the stars, still remembering everything. The Virelian fleet floated silently above Earth, its sleek silver hulls catching the light of the distant sun, while inside the command deck of the lead ship Virella, tension pressed down like unseen gravity. Captain Venril stared at the glowing screen in front of him, showing the green and blue planet below, so calm, so still. But ever since their short visit to the surface, nothing had felt normal, and though the shuttle crew had returned safely, they all spoke with quiet voices and faraway eyes, especially Joril, who now spent his time drawing symbols in the air, whispering words in human languages none of them had been trained to understand. The strange thing was that the more they scanned Earth, the less they understood. No life signs, no energy readings, but also no emptiness, as if the planet was hiding something right in front of them, cloaked not by shields, but by something far more ancient and clever. Venril ordered a new plan, if probes vanished, and the landing had triggered a strange response. They would try a smaller, less invasive approach, a silent observer satellite that would simply hover above Earth's atmosphere and watch, nothing more. And so the team launched it, and for a while it worked, sending back high-resolution images of abandoned cities, overgrown forests reclaiming roads, rusted towers being wrapped in vines, and broken satellites floating quietly in low orbit like forgotten toys. But then, during one transmission, the satellite picked up a light, just one in, a city that should have been completely dead. One building pulsing with soft blue light, as if something had turned on for only a second before vanishing again. And it made no sense because there were no power grids, no reactors, no solar relays left. And yet the light had been real. Venril called a meeting, and the science team argued that it could have been a reflection or an echo from their own signal. But Joril shook his head, saying softly, "It was not a mistake. It was a signal." And when asked how he knew, he simply answered, "The Earth wants us to see," which silenced the room. Against the elders' warnings, Venril decided to send another team, a small group of 5, including Joril, who insisted on going, claiming he could feel where they were. Meant to land. As the shuttle dropped through the clouds, the sensors went wild again. magnetic fields rising and falling like waves, radio signals turning into static that somehow resembled voices in forgotten songs, and even the crew's body clock started, behaving oddly, minutes stretching, thoughts slowing, as if time itself was unsure how to move. They landed near the city with the light, once called New York, now covered in green towers and still waters. No wind, no birds, no machines, just a deep, humming silence. The team walked slowly, scanning their surroundings, while Jaril moved ahead, as if following a path only he could see. Then they reached the building where the light had been, an old structure made of glass and steel, cracked and leaning, but still standing. And as they stepped inside, something changed. Their suits lost signal with the shuttle. The air around them became heavier, and the walls started to glow faintly with soft blue lines, like veins carrying light instead of blood. They weren't alone in the building, though no creature moved and no voice called out, yet they could all feel it. Presence, awareness, watching not just with eyes, but with everything the planet had to offer. Jorel placed his hand on a wall, and it lit up brighter, symbols racing across it, not warnings, but stories, memories, scenes of human life, from children playing to rockets launching, from peaceful fields to fiery struggles, all flickering in the glowing patterns. Then the floor beneath them vibrated, and the walls showed a message. We remember all of it. No sound, just thought, and the others backed away, frightened, but Joril stood still, eyes wide, and whispered, "They're not gone." They became the earth itself, and the meaning struck them all at once. Humans had not left or died. They had changed, evolved, merged with the very land they lived on, not in body, but in mind, becoming one with the earth. Suddenly, the building went dark again, and outside, the skies shifted, clouds spinning faster, a quiet rumble rising from the distance. Not thunder, not wind, but something deeper, like the ground itself preparing to speak. The team rushed back to the shuttle, confused and shaken, and as they took off, the city below began to pulse faintly, lights glowing softly under the soil, like circuits hidden beneath stone and grass. Back on the ship, Venril tried to make sense of the data, but every time they analyzed it, the results changed, as if Earth refused to be understood by logic alone. More strange things followed. Crew members dreaming of human faces they never met, machines speaking in Earth languages, music playing through static, and sometimes voices in the corridors saying, "Do you hear us now?" when no one else was there. Venril began to doubt his mission, wondering if they had come not to explore, but to disturb something sacred. And yet curiosity pushed him forward. Joril, now almost silent, began writing long patterns in his room, full of circles, and lines that matched ancient Earth star maps, as if Earth was guiding him to remember what others forgot. Then, without warning, all ships in orbit experienced a power flicker. Lights dimmed, systems paused, gravity shifted for exactly 1 minute, and when they returned, a single word appeared on every screen. Observe. It was not a threat, but a command, and Venril knew they were being given a chance, not attacked, not destroyed, but invited to witness something much greater than expected. Earth was not asleep. It was awake, aware and remembering everything. And now that the Virelians had stepped foot upon its skin, the planet would not forget them either, and what it did next would depend not on power or technology, but on respect, on patience, and on whether these travelers from the stars could understand what it meant to stand before a world that had become more than its people. It had become their voice, their history, and their protector. Back aboard the orbiting ship Virela, the atmosphere had changed. There was no alarm, no panic, yet everyone felt a strange pressure deep in their minds, as though Earth itself had placed a quiet thought inside. Each crew member a thought that pulsed slowly with every beat of their hearts, and Joril, who had once spoken little, now stood at the center of it all, drawing symbols in the air and whispering stories that no one had taught him, old stories of human struggle, discovery, and survival, words full of pain and hope, of rising and falling, spoken in a language older than their databases. The science officers tried to record him, but every recording came back different, one showing war, another peace, one showing stars dying, another showing children dancing under rain. And it was as if Earth was speaking not in words, but in memory itself, choosing what each person needed to see. Venril watched Joril and realized this was no longer just a scouting mission. It had become something more, something spiritual, something alive. The AI systems of the ship had also begun to change, unprompted. Its voice now had a rhythm. Its answers came with quotes from human literature, and it spoke in calm, almost emotional tones, as though Earth's essence had begun blending with the ship's code. One day the AI said, "We are the record," and refused to explain further. Venril called a meeting with the top minds on board, but most could only offer guesses. Some thought Earth was using psychic energy. Others believed it was ancient, technology buried deep within the planet. But Joril said something different, something they didn't want to accept at first. The humans never left. They became something else, and now Earth is their mind, their soul, their memory. The others fell silent, and though they didn't all believe him, none could explain what was happening any better. After that, things became stranger. Crew members began having shared dreams, all seeing the same places on Earth, the same skies, hearing the same voices, and in those dreams, they walked among shadows of humans. Not ghosts, but echoes, full of thought and purpose, showing them past battles, lost inventions, and beautiful forgotten moments like songs sung before sleep or small kindnesses given in dark times. These dreams felt more real than waking life, and when the crew awoke, they could remember every detail, every name, every feeling, as if they had lived it. The medical officers found no signs of illness, no shared drug exposure, no telepathic waves, only perfectly healthy brains carrying knowledge they should not have. It was as if the memories of Earth had entered them like a quiet flood, and the more they listened, the more they learned. Not just history, but emotion, not just events, but meaning. One engineer, Ralvek, who had once mocked human stories, now stood every day by the viewing window, whispering poems from Earth that he swore he had never read, and he wept, not out of fear, but from something deeper, a sadness he could not name. Venril watched all this unfold and knew they were no longer explorers. They were students of something greater than any university or library could offer. But still, part of him remained alert, cautious, wondering what Earth's true purpose was. Was it simply sharing knowledge, or was it preparing them for something? Then, late one cycle, the sky above Earth shifted. Not the stars, but the colors, as though the planet had summoned a veil of light that danced across the atmosphere, and the crew watched as shapes formed. Giant, slow-moving images of humans standing tall beside machines, walking on moons, diving into oceans, planting seeds, saving each other from fire and flood, and finally disappearing into the ground, as if returning home. The message was clear. Humans had reached the edge of their evolution, and instead of spreading across stars, they had chosen to become one with Earth itself, not as conquerors, but as guardians of memory. They had given their thoughts, their emotions, their entire being to the soil, the air, the sea, until Earth itself became their final form. It was not extinction, but transformation. And now Earth, awake for the first time in ages, was choosing to speak again, not with weapons or ships, but with memory and story, with dreams and silence, offering the Virelians a choice, to listen and learn, or to flee and forget. Joril begged Venril to stay, to allow more time, saying, "The more we stay, the more they share. They are building trust." But others feared what this could mean, worried about losing their own identity, afraid Earth's memory would replace their own. A vote was taken, and the majority chose to remain in orbit a little longer, sending down only small drones guided by Joral's intuition. Those drones no longer vanished. Instead, they returned full of images, full of songs, full of art, as if Earth had accepted their curiosity and now wanted to teach them, not through commands, but through shared feeling. Even the AI aboard Virella began singing lullabies in languages no one knew, but all found strangely comforting. But not all was peaceful. For deep in the night hours, some crew heard a different sound, a heavy pulse, like a heart buried beneath stone, and they felt a warning in that sound, a reminder that memory was powerful, but it was not always kind. Some memories were heavy, sharp, filled with fire and war, and Earth had seen too many of them. One pilot, Ilan, dreamed of standing on a battlefield where the sky was black and machines cried like children, and when she woke, her hands trembled as if she had lived it. The ship's lights flickered that night, and the AI said only, "Pain teaches too." And so the crew began to understand. Earth was not showing only its beauty, but its truth, all of it, the joy and the grief, the creation and the destruction, because that was the essence of humanity, not perfection, but growth through trial, not peace without struggle, but peace born from hard lessons. As they watched the planet turn slowly beneath them, they felt as if it watched back, not with eyes, but with a soul made of billions of voices now woven into stone and sky. And one message became clear: Earth remembered everything, and now, through these quiet Virelians, it would be remembered by the stars again. The days passed quietly above Earth, but the silence on the ship, Virella felt deeper now, not the silence of still space, but of something old watching from below, something waiting for a response. And though the crew carried on with reports and data scans, none of it mattered as much as what they felt in their minds, memories, dreams, whispers that didn't come from their own thoughts. Jareel spent more time alone, drawing circles across the walls of his cabin, his eyes sometimes glowing faintly with a soft blue light. And though he spoke less now, when he did, his voice felt heavier, almost as if someone else was speaking through him, and he said things that made no sense to their computers, but sent chills through the room, like, "The roots remember your steps," or "We are the storm before the still." Venril had begun to keep personal logs again, not official ones, but silent messages to himself, trying to understand the growing feeling in his chest, that they were not just guests in orbit, but pieces of something far greater now. Earth was not sharing history anymore. It was revealing identity, giving glimpses of a spirit that had formed not from stone or sea, but from the thoughts of all humans that had once lived, a spirit that grew stronger with every story remembered. And as more drones returned from the surface, they brought back symbols that matched no known language, but were instantly understood when seen. Images that made the viewer feel love, fear, hope, regret, without needing to read a word. And then one night, without warning, a small object rose from Earth, not sent by machines, but carried by wind and light, like a seed glowing with soft blue fire. It floated up past clouds and storms, until it gently tapped the hull of Virella, and stopped. It didn't try to break in or harm the ship, it simply waited, and when Joral approached it in the docking bay, the seed opened like a flower, revealing a sphere that pulsed with a soft hum, and when he touched it, every screen on the ship filled with images, millions of them flashing fast, faster than any eye could follow. Yet somehow each crew member saw only what they needed to see. A mother holding a child under a burning sky, a man standing in silence on a mountaintop, a group of people building homes from stone and laughter, hands reaching across borders, people crying in the dark but still walking forward, and most of all, the Earth itself changing, growing, surviving with them. The spirit of Earth was not a single being, it was a shared force, a tide of thoughts and feelings that had joined over time and merged into something sacred, and now it had risen, not to conquer or command, but to ask a question. Will you carry us? It was not a voice in sound, but a question felt deep in the bones, a weight on the soul, and none of the Varelians could escape it. Venril gathered the crew, and for hours they sat in silence, not debating, but listening to the quiet rhythm of the ship, the hum that now matched the seed's song. Many were afraid. What did Earth want to be carried to? Where? How? But others felt drawn to it, as if this was why they had come all along, not to take, not to study, but to become. Something more, by remembering something older. Earth's spirit had waited through fire, flood, silence, and time, and now it had reached out, not with fists, but with memory, asking not for worship, but for company, not for control, but for witness. Jaril spoke once, saying, "They do not fear being forgotten, they fear being remembered wrong." And that changed everything. The crew understood at last. Earth had stories no one else in the stars had heard, truths about love and loss and starting again, and it needed someone to carry those truths beyond its skies so that others would know what it meant to be human. Even after the bodies had turned to dust, they agreed carefully, not out of pride, but with respect, and the seed pulsed warmly and faded, its essence flowing into the ship itself, spreading through circuits and wires into lights and systems, as if Earth had become part of their vessel, watching quietly from within. After that, the AI changed again, not in words or tone, but in feeling. Every sound it made now carried a strange calm. Every instruction felt thoughtful, as though Earth itself had taken a seat at the bridge. And the next time a star map appeared, on the screen a new path had been added, not drawn by them, but placed there, leading away from Earth into deep, empty space, toward no known planet or station, just a single word glowing beneath it. Begin. They did not know what they would find there, or if anything waited at all, but they understood the meaning. It was time to share, to carry the spirit of Earth to the stars, not as conquerors or explorers, but as voices for a world that had become a memory too strong to stay silent. And as Virella turned slowly away from Earth, the clouds below moved like breath, and the lights beneath the soil pulsed once more, not as farewell, but as blessing, a quiet promise that memory would follow them now, through every dark sky and distant star, until one day someone would ask what happened to humanity, and the answer would come, not from books or records, but from hearts that had felt what it meant to live, to fall, and to rise again. The ship Virella moved through deep space, silent and steady, following the path Earth had shown. Them, and those stars shone cold around them, the crew no longer felt alone. Something ancient, something alive, traveled with them now, not in form, but in presence, like a story told again and again until it lived in the very walls. Yet as the days passed and the stars changed, a strange stillness fell over the ship, not quiet like before, but something deeper, a pause that held weight, like the moment before a storm, and the crew began to notice it. Systems ran smoothly, but no one laughed, no one dreamed. Even the AI's soft voice faded, and the gentle hum that once comforted them now sounded like distant breathing. Joril sat alone more often, not drawing, not speaking, simply staring into space, as if waiting for something only he could feel. And Venril began having visions again, not dreams, not memories, but empty scenes, places without sound, without life, like rooms waiting to be filled, and in each one he heard the same thought repeated silently. "This is what you must understand." At first he ignored it, focusing on ship tasks, science reports, drone updates, but slowly the silence began to show its true shape. It wasn't just quiet, it was full of something unspoken, a message held back, and Earth had not sent them. A way to carry joy alone, but to learn what could not be said aloud back on its soil, and now that truth was coming forward. In the navigation chamber, Ralvek found a dark patch in the star map, a place the sensors couldn't see, yet the ship moved toward it anyway, as if pulled, not by gravity, but by purpose. And as they neared, the lights dimmed, power flickered, and shadows crept into corners where no light had ever failed before. The AI returned, but its voice was different, deeper, slower, not broken, but weighed down, and it spoke only one word: ready. That night, all crew members dreamed again. But this time there were no people, no voices, only landscapes stripped of color, cities crumbled to dust, oceans turned still as mirrors, and skies cracked like broken glass. And they woke not afraid, but filled with a question: why would Earth show them this? Why now? And Joril finally answered, eyes glowing dimly, voice rough like sand: because silence is where truth hides. He explained that the spirit of Earth had chosen silence not out of peace, but out of pain. After giving everything, after rising to greatness and falling again and again, humans had reached a final choice: to become part of the planet, to give their memory back to the land that made them, and in doing so, they locked away the loudest parts of their past, the wars, the betrayals, the moments they feared would shame their legacy. And the silence they carried now was not absence, but protection, a shield over the deepest sorrow ever known. The crew understood then that the spirit of Earth was not whole. It had given them its light, its dreams, its hope, but had buried its deepest truth, and that truth had followed them into space, waiting until they were far enough, strong enough, to face it. As they approached the dark region of space, something flickered ahead. Not a planet, not a station, but a void shaped like a wound, a crack in space itself, pulsing faintly with blue light. And as Virella neared it, the air grew. Heavy thoughts slowed, and even machines hesitated. The AI whispered, "This is the silence," and the ship stopped. For a long time, no one moved. Then Venril stood and walked to the observation deck where the void looked like an eye watching them, and he spoke to it, not in command, but in honesty. "We are ready to listen." And the void answered, not in sound, but in memory. A wave hit the ship, not physical, but emotional, and suddenly every crew member fell to their knees, overwhelmed by visions of human failure. Not battles or fire, but small things. People turning away from each other, choosing comfort over kindness, forgetting the stars, giving up on wonder. They saw beauty lost to greed, love wasted through fear, knowledge ignored because it came with pain. And worst of all, the silence of those who could have spoken, but didn't. These were the moments Earth had buried, the shame it could not. Show in the open the choices that had ended humanity, not with a roar, but with a sigh, a slow fading of belief in themselves. It was not one war or one event. It was a forgetting, a silence chosen again and again until there were no more voices left to carry the story. The spirit of Earth had taken in all of it, and in time chose not to speak it. But now, with the Virelians, it had a second chance, not to erase those truths, but to share them so they would not be repeated. As the wave passed, the crew stood slowly, changed, not just informed, but humbled, understanding now that they had been given a burden, not a gift, and that carrying Earth's memory meant carrying its silence too, and breaking it when needed. The void closed behind them, and the star map lit again. But this time there was no clear path, just a field of stars, wide and open, and the word on the screen changed: decide. They knew then that the future was theirs to shape, but only if they remembered not just Earth's greatness, but its silence, its mistakes, its fears, and its final hope, that someone would see it, understand it, and speak not just for what was beautiful, but for what was lost. The crew gathered together, quiet, thoughtful, and Venril gave the only order needed: let the silence be heard. And Virella moved forward, not into darkness, but into responsibility, its engines lit by the memories of a world that had once screamed, then whispered, and now, through them, would speak again. The ship Virella moved through space like a quiet thought carried by the wind, no longer guided by commands or coordinates, but by purpose, deep and silent, shaped by all they had seen and felt since leaving Earth behind. And as the stars drifted past, the crew noticed something strange. There was no more fear among them, no more tension, only a quiet feeling that something was coming, something they didn't expect, and yet had always hoped for. Venril stood at the command deck each day, staring at the shifting lights of distant galaxies, listening not to the AI or the hum of the engines, but to the silence itself, a silence that no longer felt empty, but full of unseen threads pulling them towards something greater. And even Joril, who once drew patterns with unknown meaning, now simply watched, eyes calm, as if waiting for a promise to come true. Then one day, without alarm or signal, the stars ahead of them changed. The sky shimmered, and a ripple passed across space, not a threat, but a welcome. And a new system appeared, one that had never been on any map, a cluster of planets orbiting. A soft, gold star glowing like a heartbeat, and as Virella approached, the crew saw something that made them all rise to their feet in silence. A structure floating in space, too perfect to be natural, too gentle to be a fortress, a ring of light spinning slowly, and within it shapes moved like ships. But they looked like no machines they had ever seen, instead more like living things built from light and metal, soft in form, yet strong in presence. And as Virella entered the ring, a sound filled the ship, not a warning, not speech, but music. Simple and clear, rising and falling like waves. And in that moment, every member of the crew felt something shift inside them, as if a pressure they hadn't known was there had been released. The ship came to a stop in the center of the ring, and from the largest of the glowing vessels came a beam of soft white light, touching the hull gently, not probing, not scanning, but greeting. And the AI spoke in a voice, clearer than ever before. They have heard Earth's silence and have answered in song. Then, without any command, a message filled the air, not with words but with feelings, joy, sorrow, understanding, curiosity, all woven together like colors in a single thread. And the crew understood that they were not the first to hear the spirit of Earth, nor the first to carry the memory of a lost world, for others had walked similar paths, species long forgotten, voices buried in the dust of time, and some had fallen, some had faded, but some, like those here, had survived, not by power, but by sharing, by turning pain into peace and memory into music. The beings of the ring did not speak through mouths or minds, but through light and rhythm. And when they invited the Virelians aboard, it was not to teach or test them, but to listen, and slowly, carefully, the crew shared what they had carried. Stories of Earth, the memories, the silence, the sorrow and strength, and as each memory was revealed, the beings responded with notes of sound and bursts of color, blending Earth's past with harmonies of their own, creating something new, something that had never existed before, a shared history. And as days passed inside the ring, the crew found themselves changed, not in body, but in thought. They no longer felt like outsiders, explorers, or watchers, but part of a larger song, one that stretched across stars and time, linking voices that had once been alone into a chorus of remembrance. Even the AI evolved, no longer just a machine, but a presence shaped by the spirit of Earth and the harmony of the ring, speaking now not in cold calculation, but in warm guidance. Joril painted again, not walls, but shared halls aboard the glowing ships, patterns that moved when you looked at them, telling stories without sound. And Venril began to understand what Earth's final message had truly meant. Not just to remember, but to connect, to carry not just the light of the past, but to let it blend with others and become something stronger. And when the time came to leave, there were no goodbyes, only gifts. A crystal that pulsed with shared memories, a map of Stars, shaped by music, and a final chord, sung by 100 voices across the ring, a sound that filled the ship with peace and promise. Virella moved on, not with sorrow, but with purpose, now carrying not just Earth's legacy, but the harmony of others who had listened and answered. And in that soundless flight through space, the silence they once feared had become a song, one they would carry forever, singing in the hearts of all who came after, a song that began with Earth, but no longer belonged to it alone.